So I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:30. I want to recognize our very large public audience tonight. Thank you all for coming. I want to mention briefly the rules of procedure, but I think they are also in depth on the underneath the sign-in sheet there.
Yes.
But in particular, all meetings of the select board are meetings in the public, but not of the public, so that you are invited to, at a certain time, to make comments, but the comments on a particular item cannot go for longer than 5 minutes total. And you have to address your comments to the chair and be given permission to speak. It's not a free-for-all here tonight, so. And that's kind of it. I will say that this is probably going to be a long meeting. Are there additions to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay. Are there changes to the agenda order?
I do have one. Due to some factors, we're going to move the executive session to after the highway update instead of at the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. That means we're going to ask, when we go into an executive session, everybody to remove themselves to...
Well, it might be easier
Well,
for me
maybe, yeah, why don't we just
ourselves.
go remove ourselves and then come back. And so I would like to, there's one other change to the addition, which is that under new business, flood hazard discovery mapping meeting is tabled because Steve Lemke's not available tonight. And it would be good to check with him on his availability before rescheduling it, okay? Okay, so everybody's had a chance to read the minutes of the meeting of March 11th, 2019. And is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I have an amendment.
You have an amendment.
Should have got changed to the minutes.
Okay.
I think, I'm not looking at them right now, but there's where it says the election and re-election of Richard and Michael.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a firm that's incorrect there.
Not re-election for me.
Says Michael.
It sounds as if we were both re-elected, and that's not true.
We welcome new select board members, Michael Becker, new select board, and Richard W. Were re-elected.
Oh.
So
yeah,
it's
sure.
unclear. We can fix that, Richard.
I'll fix it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Oh, sure. I thought that, I had something to say also. I thought that it's not really an amendment to the minutes, but just that we should put our goals in a more consistent final form. But I thought that, I didn't think that the goals were misstated in any way. I just thought that when we explain our goals to the public, it would be good to, clarify the language.
Right, and you and I were going to work on that separately. So, in the meantime, what they are in the minutes.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Okay.
So you still need a motion.
I still need a motion.
I move that we accept the
Thank you,
minutes as
Brenda.
amended.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Michael. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Richard.
Sign this.
Okay, so, general highway update. Peter? I guess Danny's not going to make it tonight?
No. I spoke with Dan earlier today, and as everyone knows, we've been having a little bit of mud, not as bad as was expected. So they've been filling in soft spots, working on a few different culverts that are having some issues, and mostly repairing equipment. They did start grading today, which I'm sure everyone's going to be excited about, as long as the roads, as long as we have the warm days that are predicted towards the end of the week, it should enable them to keep grading all week. And that's about all they're working on right now.
Posting?
Yes.
Well, actually, I think I have an update.
Okay.
So last week, was it, we met with V-Trans?
Yep.
So Peter, Danny, and I met with Megan Brunk and a trainee, Tyler, somebody,
I don't remember his last name.
from V-Trans to go through the annual highway budget that was approved at town meeting and to figure out what our level of expenses are as they relate to emergency funding. And during the course of that meeting, we talked about a lot of other things, which I just thought I would mention really quickly here. And then we talked about these afterwards with Danny also, and you could just refer to that long memo that we did. So in mid-March to July, they deal with mud season issues and then grading and ditching and hauling gravel if possible. This summer, they plan to finish stone line ditching on 3 Carpenter Hill road segments, actually by May 30th. And we're looking at a structures grant for 2 culverts on Carpenter Hill by the end of the summer or early fall. We're thinking about a new structures grant application for another culvert on
Tater Lane.
Tater Lane.
Oh, good.
To get a grant for that for April 8th. Danny's talking about paving projects on Guilford Center Road and Weatherhead Hollow Road. Then there'll be mowing. There is some concern about the abutments on the Fitch Road Bridge, and we're going to have an engineer come and look at those. It's been an issue for many, many years. And the roads inventory, perhaps in conjunction with the Emerald Ash Borer inventory, needs to be completed by fall 2019 to be in compliance with the Municipal General Roads.
Roads General Permit.
Municipal Roads General Permit, MRGP.
So that's what that stands for.
Municipal Roads General Permit
Okay.
requirements from the state. In addition, we're looking at repairs on the garage, maybe looking at Fitch Road Bridge a little more in depth depending on what the engineers find out. So I just thought I'd bring people up to date on what is planned for the next several months.
Could we include that in the minutes or
Yeah, and
something
I actually
in
meant
that
to send
form?
this out to you guys, and I totally forgot.
Just so that we
So
can
I will
keep,
do that.
an understanding of the timeline.
Okay.
Yep, I'll make sure it's in
That'd
the
be very
minutes.
helpful.
All right, posting roads now, sorry.
So as I'm sure that folks saw, Dan started posting the roads last week for heavy trucks. So with that, so the mud started loosening up last week before the select board meeting, so they need to today approve his posting the roads. So if you want to, here's what your...
Retroactively, right?
Yes, retroactive. So this is what your motion is, and then if you want to read out those
please.
requirements.
Okay.
Or I'll read them out.
Okay, we need a motion to post Guilford Town roads pursuant to Title 19, Vermont State
Statutes
the
annotated.
State Transportation Board has made in promulgating the following rule now administered by V-Trans in accordance with Section 12 of Act Number 246 of 1999.
So, move.
Hang on.
Oh.
So you want me to read it? or
I'll
you
read
want-
it.
All right.
So,
These
never mind,
list them
you
all.
read it.
So the requirements are for 2-axle trucks on state highways, maximum of 20,000 pounds. On town roads, a maximum of 15,000 pounds. 3-axle trucks, a maximum of 30,000 pounds on state highways, and 18,000 on state highway, town highways. And tractor trailers, a maximum of 40,000 pounds on state highways and 20,000 pounds on town highways. The following roads will be posted: Stage Road, River Road, Green River Road, gravel sections of Heinsberg Road, Collier Road, Hale Road, Briggs Road, Lee Road, Hayes Road, Bonnievale Road, Ashworth Road, Carpenter Hill Road, Senator Hunt Road, Potter Hill Road, Barney Hill Road, Fitch Road, Bullock Road, Oak Hill Road, Fairground Road, Stony Hill Road, Baker Cross Road, Sweet Pond Road, Packer Corner Road, Keats Brook Road, Tater Lane, Creamery Road, Melody Lane, Butternut Hill Road, Slate Rock Road, and East Mountain Road. And the only types of trucks that are exempt from this are fuel deliveries and those deliveries for farms, such as milk trucks, grain trucks, etc.
So moved.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Courtney. Any discussion? Lynn?
I'm not
Question?
sure if we can put it in. You mentioned V-Trans. Is this a time where I could ask a V-Trans question?
No,
Okay.
no, because,
No, that's fine. I just
Yeah.
thought I'd ask. Thank you.
So, sorry. No, we're only talking about the posting of the roads now. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have, and we need a
So
motion
two
to
motions.
enter, 2 motions.
With Richard not here, do we have to do the,
No,
Okay,
no,
okay,
we
good.
only-
Thank
we
you.
only have to do,
Okay,
if it's
excellent.
not unanimous, then
Okay.
we have to do a roll
fair
call
enough.
vote.
Perfect. That's correct.
Okay, 2 motions. The first motion is to move that premature knowledge of discussions could potentially put the town at significant disadvantage.
So moved.
Thank you, Gordon. Is there a
To
second?
go into executive
Richard said
session.
seconds.
is
No,
what
that's
you're-
Not yet.
Oh, it is, okay.
Richard seconded.
We're gonna get this one of these
Okay.
years.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the next motion is to enter into executive session at 6:40 PM per 1 Vermont statute. VSA 313A1E in light of probable litigation to which the body may be party and invite Town Administrator Peter Rood and Attorney Pat Bew to join.
So moved.
So moved, Gordon. Richard, are you seconding?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we are going to, at 6:40, go to the other meeting room.
Are you gonna take me with you?
Yes, we are.
I'll be the phone carrier.
Okay, thank you.
So we are exiting executive session at 7:14 PM and no action being taken. The next item on the agenda was flood hazard discovery mapping meeting, but that topic is tabled because Steve Lemke is not available tonight. Harry, you are here to talk about
Well,
purchasing school property.
Just a concerned citizen,
Yeah.
and
Come and sit down.
I don't have any agenda. My question is, with all this school stuff going on and the consolidation and so forth, a lot of people ask me questions about the school land. And
They ask you questions about the school?
the school land, how much
Land,
land?
property, okay.
Because I remember that when they purchased the school land, they got 18 acres here, which includes where we're sitting right here now. And then when they built the town office building in very early 70s, a little chunk of land was carved out of the school land. And then when they put in the town garage over here, I don't know what year that was, but they carved out
1991.
a little chunk of land, so the school has all the rest of the budding land there. And I know in a lot of other towns, the school board and the towns are looking at transferring some of the school land back to the town. So when this consolidation takes place, some of that land stays with the town. And I don't know whether there's been any discussion in this area, in this town, because, you know, you got just a little chunk of land here, and it might be nice if you had a little bit more land with the town office. So I stopped and got a map. Maybe you folks have got a map.
This is the deed.
Oh,
You wanna hold
Oh,
that up?
great, but did you,
Here he's got.
I got some copies.
oh, that's great, Harry.
Thank you.
I stopped in and Lisa made me some copies of that, because I didn't know just myself where the property line was. And so I would think we're probably roughly 14
Here's a
acres or so
spare.
that's
It's
still.
exactly 14 acres.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, 14,
Yeah.
It's just these two.
14 acres right there.
So seeing
This is
that
ours.
a lot of the other towns have been doing something with the town and the school board, and I see in the paper where Athens and Grafton and I know Dummerston has transferred some of their land, their athletic field, back to the town. And Brattleboro, I believe, is just something in the paper the other day that in the legal notices, the Crow lot, they're gonna transfer that back to the town, which is school property. So I just was wondering if, I think there should be some discussion in this town regard to, there's quite a little land. And as I understand it, I could be wrong, but when this consolidation takes place, all the land goes with it.
So Harry, when you talk about consolidation, are you meaning that the schools are no longer schools, or that the kids are, you know, that some grades of the kids are removed from the schools, or are you talking about the consolidation of school boards into one big school board?
Into one big school board.
Uh-huh. I see, because the one big school board wouldn't have the best interest, let's say, of Guilford as Guilford at heart.
That's my thinking. And I don't know what control the town
Right.
would have over that land once it was established, that big mega board that has every control over every school area. So I don't know, I just thought it was something that should be discussed there. I did a little bit of research. I looked back in some old town reports, back in, if you want to look at something interesting,
Sure.
in the consolidation of schools in Guilford, go back to 1954. And that's when they purchased 54 and 55. That's when they purchased this property. They had other sites in town they had looked at. And interesting not, one of the other sites was down on the Tracy field, which is the Hannigan field. That was another
Oh,
site
really?
they were considering.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, and that's in the old town reports. Yeah, so that's kind of my question is has there been any discussion?
So, should I respond? I
Sure,
did,
whatever.
because your question caused me to do a little bit of research.
Sure.
And what I learned is there was, let me just read Lyle's email. Hold on one second.
You should tell them who Lyle is.
I will as soon as I get there. So Lyle Holliday is the head of the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union, which will become a new union on July 1st when the merger takes place. So background is that in October, November, CC4G was trying to buy some property from the school, because there was a November 30th, 2018 deadline. It seemed like they were going to be favorably responded to by the school, but then the school decided not to. The school board decided not to, for whatever reasons, and I would not presume to represent those reasons, but they decided not to. So Lyle Holliday says, since the entities have been merged, we can't sell or transfer property anymore. We have to follow the Articles of Agreement. But, so we have these 14, let me get back to my other note here. We have these 14.
And I just, at the school board part of the town meeting, I asked a question very similar to that, because I knew this didn't, we talked about this briefly, but it didn't happen. I couldn't understand why this didn't happen, and if it didn't happen, how could it maybe happen before and that was the response I received from the people that were our school board members now, that we could not do anything until after the merger. That's exactly what they said.
Right, so, but there is a date that something perhaps could be done before June 30th, maybe, but it would be a huge legal leach field. But let me just keep going on. So it's 14 acres. The building sits on 14 acres. And the feasibility study that the CC4G paid for, they found that most of that acreage is not usable for old leach field, new leach field, and wetland because of that. So there's a small amount around here that the school right now is using for their nature programs that they apparently wanted to continue to keep using. Please don't quote me on that. You need to go to the school board to be sure about that. But I think that's it. What we did learn is that if the school closes in the coming years, First of all, on June 30th, the transfer, we get $1 from the new union for the school, all the school property, the land, the buildings, the contents, everything, we get $1. As long as the school is operating as a school, it belongs to this new union. If the union were to decide to close the school, if it was not used but for at least one classroom, and they were going to close the school, they would then offer it back to the town for $1. So the town has first dibs, and the single requirement of the town in taking possession of this property, repossessing the property, would be that it maintain it for public or community purposes for 5 years. And then we could do whatever we wanted to do. So as long as the school is open, it runs exactly the same. There's at no cost to the town other than the normal cost. In other words, we don't get tax revenues from them, and we have to pay whatever the budget is going to be, and I think that's going to come before the town in a special town meeting, because we don't know what the school board's budget is yet. If this new union decides for some reason in the future, at any point in the future, to close the school, the town has first right to get it for $1, which is.
I guess I've
we don't
kind of
go,
heard that before.
We don't get into any expensive proposition now trying to acquire land that is going to still be used by the school, as long as it is. But we can do it for $1 when we need to, if we need to, if it comes up as that school is not being used as a school. So, let's see. And then she says there's a very involved Vermont statute that says we got to do a whole lot of stuff if we don't take it and we want to turn it into something else. So now, beforehand, with somewhat questionable value of those 14 acres, and then, you know, as long as it's going to be used by the school, it seems that the $1 is a better deal. So.
Well, I guess my thinking was that as long as I have followed along some of the stuff a little bit, the school stuff, our kids were all out of school, but, you know, other towns have been looking at it, and, you know, and I just thought maybe that this should be talked about in this town. But,
I think that it's, you know, sort of how the decision was made to do what is happening with the schools has been completely beyond the scope of our select board. You know, I'm sure people have their own opinions, but we had no say, you know, in
I think it's beyond the scope of a lot of people.
I think that's true.
A lot of people.
And I think...
Because I don't think a lot of people realize that the land goes with the school.
Oh, really?
That's the impression that I have heard.
Really?
They would, when I mentioned about the land going with the school, they couldn't believe it. They thought it was just a school in the parking lot or something. So.
Well, we're lucky to have such wonderful grounds, you know, with our school. And I suppose for all of us, you know, our best option of keeping the land is supporting our school vigorously, and every initiative to show how much it counts to us to have this school, and to show how connected we all are.
Well, thank you for your time.
Well, geez, and thank you for this.
I'm glad you raised the question.
I just thought it should be raised, and I don't know. Of course, we don't know. Everything hasn't gone through yet. I mean, the legislature's still in session. Who knows? They could do something that could change the picture a little. They could, but don't know.
They don't seem, from just what I read, they don't seem real inclined to do that, but there are still lawsuits pending, and you know, I think it's been very stressful for our school board
Oh, certainly.
to be caught in the middle. And luckily, the teachers are persevering, being teachers, and the kids are persevering
Yeah.
and being kids, and
Yeah.
so that's the good part.
Well, time will tell how it'll all work out.
Yes, well, it's great to have you be concerned, Harry.
Thank you,
Thank
Harry.
you, because
raising it.
got us to understand more of it as a result of your question, so.
Yeah.
I would like to thank Sheila for doing that research. That's very important research in regard to the question for the select board. So thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, and thank you, Harry.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, and
Thanks, Harry.
everybody has to stay on the case, Harry.
okay.
Keep
Go to
going.
school board
thanks.
meetings too,
Oh, I haven't got time for all that.
not just you. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is the Guilford Country Store liquor and tobacco licenses. It's an annual license approval that we need to do.
Yep, so they apply to the state, but they need to have select board approval in order to apply for their license to the state.
So the motion would be to approve, can you just really all ahead of me? To renew the Guilford Country Store liquor and tobacco licenses for the coming
Year.
12 years, 12
No,
months?
12 months.
Thank you, Richard, so
It's
moved.
from April 1st through March 30th.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Miranda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item, commission liaisons for select board members. So do we have a list of who's doing what, or do we just need to go around?
Just need to go around.
So
I'm
you're
the cemetery
and
commissioner and recreation.
You're Rescue Inc. I'm Wyndham Solid Waste and Planning Commission. Are you Conservation Commission? Richard, what are you?
Library.
Library. I don't know if that counts.
I haven't been appointed to one yet, or
No, you gotta,
Are there any
what do we have?
vacancies?
Another
So Sheila, you are planning commission.
Wyndham Solid Waste.
Yep.
And so, Michael, the Conservation Commission needs a liaison, and Gabby had been their liaison, and they're a great commission.
I'm sorry,
It
does
means showing up
conservation,
at
is
their
that what you said?
meetings
Yes.
and like reporting to them on what the select board is doing
And
briefly,
and
and vice versa.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I would love
if
to do that.
something that you know can be helpful to them,
Mhm.
you know,
Well,
I
if
know
there's
that
another
that was.
commission, You
It-
feel strong?
There's no other,
There are?
rec, cemetery, planning, conservation.
Who's on the right?
Miranda.
I
Oh, I'm
Miranda's got
sorry.
two.
Miranda's got two.
Okay, cemetery.
You could do Wyndham Solid Waste for me if you want, if you're really into waste management.
I would do that one. Sure.
UT, we need to talk.
What's that?
I just don't want you to go, I'll talk to you on.
You may
Well, he
not know what
doesn't
you're
have
getting
to.
into.
Okay, I mean, I'm interested in taking one on.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
So
Conservation
we'll start
commissions.
with conservation.
Yeah, thanks.
And you can have a conversation with Sheila about Wyndham Solid Waste.
all right, fair enough. We'll be
Because
riding on
that'd
a
be-
car to Rutland
Yeah.
this Saturday, so.
Perfect.
Okay, so we did that, right? We're done.
Okay, terrific.
This is less than 10 minutes, everybody. We're whipping right along.
Yep.
Auditor appointment, do we have a new auditor?
Well, we had two that were presented to you,
Oh,
and
right.
you guys needed to make a decision on one of them.
I can't even remember who.
I thought we did that last.
I thought, yeah, I thought.
No, you did not appoint one, because we didn't discuss it 2 weeks ago, so.
Oh, you're talking about the town office, not the outside.
Yes, correct. So these are the auditors for the annual town report. And so at town meeting day, when Kathy stood up and appealed for a third auditor to fill the 1 year remaining position for
For Neil?
Neil, that Ginny Nellis came up and volunteered for the position, and then Zon Estes came to Sheila and said that he was also interested in the position. So we have two people interested in one position.
And Zahn says that he has print publication, whatever the print.
Oh,
Experience.
yeah.
And then Ginny
And
has,
like the program too, right?
Yeah, he knows the software to put it together.
so Ginny also knows the software from her work and has both financial auditing as well as editing experience.
Well, do we need to make this decision now, since we're not really able to compare their strengths? I mean, I feel as if...
you're not gonna need the auditors, to do much until next November.
Right.
Maybe the two of them should talk to each other and decide who wants to do it more and let us
And
know.
do we only need,
That's
does
what I
it
was
need to
gonna
be
ask.
limited to 3 or could we do 4?
Well, so you guys, as a select board, could increase the number of auditors to 4 if you so wished, but you would have to make a motion
That's a
to.
great idea.
Before we do that though, have both of them
But-
received a copy of what the auditor's role is?
Kathy was going to send that to them, and I don't know the answer.
So
to
I
that.
think the action tonight would be to make sure they both volunteers have a copy of that. And then right now it's Neil and Jim, and then to have a conversation with Neil and
Neil is dead.
Jim and Kathy.
Yes.
I know, I'm sorry, to talk to them about what strengths they're really looking for. And probably with you, because you've been, so maybe you will spearhead that, Peter?
Yep, that's what I'm putting in.
Seems like
the
having
notes.
4 in the future could be difficult to.
It's not,
To
it's just
film?
editing and,
Yeah.
and reviewing and stuff like that, so.
And it would actually spread out the workload because there's.
I think that'd be a great conversation to have with Kathy too. when we
Yeah.
start
I'll talk with Kathy and Jim.
that branch
Thank
out.
you.
Okay,
So the number could just go back and forth?
yeah,
I mean, it could be
There's no-
2 some
yeah.
year or 3 another, okay.
Okay.
so Peter,
F.
do you want to talk about, do you want me to set it up and then you'll report on it?
I'm happy to do it however you want. I didn't know how you wanted to
Okay.
present this.
So I will say that there's been some discussion since town meeting of collaboration between Guilford and Vernon on how, if we might be deploying or expending town resources more efficiently in some areas, particularly in face of the ever-increasing regulatory requirements that are making us spend more money than we want to spend. So Sarah introduced Sarah Coffey introduced 3 members of the select board in Vernon to me and Peter.
Mhm.
And Peter and Michelle, both town administrators in their respective towns, have had a meeting.
Yep.
Excellent.
So, a little additional backstory is Michelle and I had spoken a couple weeks before town meeting. She had just called me because she was trying to deal with some insurance requirements similar to what Guilford has had to deal with, and was really struggling to get around that, to get some work done at their town office, because they were just having a hard time finding someone that met the requirements. And so she was just looking for someone else to try and troubleshoot, not necessarily for a partnership, but in our conversation, we just had a very brief conversation about the potential to connect the 2 towns together to, first of all, help reduce costs, but then also to help tackle the issues that we've been facing regarding requirements from the town's insurers. We both have the same insurer. And so, but it's very informal. And then several of the select board members from both sides got involved. And so last week, Michelle and I met. And so the first thing that she and I were really talking about is, because it's a concern of both select boards, is how we can reduce costs, which in turn has an impact on taxpayers, which means we don't have to raise taxes if we can reduce costs. So that's the biggest thing. And then the secondary thing, as I mentioned, was if we can find a way to collaborate on dealing with the insurance requirements, because in collaboration, the hopes then are that we could attract a slightly bigger business to come in and do certain jobs that would carry the requisite insurance that our insurers are demanding that our contractors have. So we talked about a variety of different topics and ended up landing on 3 potential topics to present to each of our respective select boards, none of which are necessarily immediate fixes. They would be more long-term things. So the first one is looking at the topic of listers. So right now in both towns, our listers are elected officials. The state has a while ago has given select boards, or towns, not select boards, I'm sorry, towns the authority to vote at either town meeting or a special town meeting to switch the lister position from an elected position to an appointed position. Part of the thing with that is that there's becoming more and more requirements that the state is putting on listers regarding education and knowledge in a variety of different ways. And as well as, I know that Guilford has struggled a little bit with finding additional listers. Vernon has had a bit more struggles in this area than we have. And one of the ideas is if we could potentially look at the idea of creating a full-time job between the two towns for one individual. That would ensure somebody would, or two individuals actually, depending on the amount of work that was needed. And so the idea is that you could hire one or two people, give them a regular full-time job, but then also guarantee that both towns have their needs met in those areas. Mm-hmm. Now, it's very complex how that would be arranged. First and foremost, it would have to go as an article at town meeting, and residents of both towns would have to decide. So if one town said, no, we want to continue electing our listers, then that's completely off the table. Then after if residents make that decision, then it has to go before the two select boards whether or not they want to collaborate on creating this joint position. Michelle and I both have heard that other towns are doing things similar to this with both listers as well as, for example, my position in smaller towns that don't have enough to employ a full-time person doing it. So there are examples in the state of people, of other towns doing stuff like this. Another specific item is in relationship to dog officer. Guilford has on and off had a hard time getting someone to be a dog officer. We had someone who was doing a really good job and had to step down from the position. Vernon has had even more problems than Guilford has had in finding someone who's willing to do this position. And so the potential to combine that, and actually adding to the conversation around dog officer, I received a phone call today from the town manager of Putney around the topic of dog officer, and found out that both Putney and Westminster and Dummerston are all struggling with the topic of dog officer as well, and how to deal with this situation. So it looks like there's a growing interest in southeastern Windham County for towns to kind of work together. And so I know she shared with me that the Putney Select Board is looking to potentially partner with other neighboring towns around a dog officer. And I was also told that Windham County Sheriff is considering creating a position for animal control officer for Windham County, and proposing that to all the towns in Windham County, because they have the training, they have the equipment to handle the situations. Guilford and Vernon, that's another conversation, but it fit into this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So dog officer is another one, and then the other one, primary topic that we discussed is the mowing of town cemeteries, which Guilford Select Board made their decision last summer what they're going to do for the time being. That doesn't mean it's not going to be an ongoing topic because of the town's insurer. That's going to keep bringing it up as we have our audit coming up next month from our insurance audit. And Vernon is dealing with the same topic. So they think that they have found a contractor who's charging a reasonable price to mow their cemeteries and has the requisite insurance. And so I informed them that our select board made a decision on this last summer. Was not sure about whether or not they would change that. But they're dealing with that also. So that's basically where we're at.
The fourth thing was office cleaning.
Oh, and office cleaning, because again, comes down to insurance, because it has two parts to do with insurance. One is because with workers' compensation insurance, they classify town employees as two different types of employees. There's administrative employees, those of us who work in the town office, and then there's the manual laborers, the guys on the road crew. And so those of us who work in the office are technically not supposed to do any form of manual labor, including taking out our
Sweeping.
trash or sweeping or mopping the
Shoveling.
floor or shoveling the snow. And
Because of insurance
because
restrictions?
because of insurance restrictions. And so obviously Vernon's dealing with the same problem. The select board decided last year to hire a company who has all the requisite insurance and was actually, they're paying the same amount we did for a town employee to do this. So we're in a good position at the moment, but Vernon is not. They're paying almost 4 times what we pay and getting less service. So the idea is to potentially partner on this and then put out a new RFP to attract someone to do both jobs, so they would give that business more work and then hopefully reduce the cost for both towns.
And so was the constable position brought up as some possible sharing thing, or is that just something we don't want to go into right now?
Well, I mean,
It's on the agenda
it's
later.
on the agenda,
Oh,
but it's,
okay.
well, I mean, as far as the
I would have
town's
thought that
collaborative.
would have been the first thing.
So that is unfortunately not an option for the 2 towns, and that is because in the 1980s, at a town meeting, Guilford voted to make our constable an appointed position by the select board versus an elected position. And apparently in Vernon, they hold very strongly that their constable will be an elected
Okay.
officer, and that the residents over there do not want it to be an appointed position. So that kind of negated that conversation about a constable immediately.
So the Vernon collaboration is really an information sharing issue. We don't need to take a specific action on this.
So I've asked Peter to do some more groundwork in terms of defining job. For example, the assessor appointed versus elected listers and clerks, it's a long-term project. It starts with how might it work, what would the job descriptions look like, what are the mechanisms for executing it equitably for both towns, what are the potential savings, and then we'd have to look at a proposed process and a timeline for implementation. And then we'd have to go to, hold on one second, Richard, then we'd have to go to the town meeting, so like next March,
Would be the earliest.
to determine if we want to change the structure of the listers, the assessors and the lister clerks. Richard?
Yes, I was thinking that this issue should get, we should get a general sense of the select board of whether we want to proceed with further investigating this potential collaboration.
Well, I think we kind of need to know whether it's going to be of any benefit to both towns before we get that sense.
No, I'm saying that we should get a sense from the select board members of whether they want to pursue beginning to investigate this.
Oh, I see, okay.
Couple questions.
Yeah.
With the lister job, is that something where there's a busy season and a slow season?
Yes.
And would both the Guilford and Vernon lister be, I mean, they're busy at the exact same time, there's no way to offset that so that it would be consistent work
We'd have to ask the
throughout the year?
listers in both towns. My personal presumption is yes, they're gonna be busy at the same time of year and be slow at the same time of year, but I can't answer that definitively. That's part of the conversation that Sheila and I had, in which she's asked me to follow up on.
The busiest time though is April, May. Once it thaws, listers have to go out and inspect properties. The assessor clerk has a
So they stay
year-round
busy,
job
just doing something
and
else.
doing data entry and updating all sorts of things and responding to things. But the visits are in the spring before taxes are finalized, before the grand list is finalized.
But when we're talking about listers, we're talking about the assessor clerk lister responsibility in total,
Slash,
correct?
yes.
Yes,
Okay,
correct, in
thank you.
totality.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
In my conversation with Lisa about this after Sheila and I spoke, so 2 immediate concerns that Lisa had, and they're not insurmountable, she said, but one is that at the present time, both towns use different software for the lister roles. So that's one issue.
Really?
I didn't
Yes.
realize that.
That's
Wow.
what, I mean, I would think that Jeremiah would,
That being said, she said that the state is currently putting out an RFP to change that, potentially change that, depending on what the responses to the RFP are. So we don't know what that would entail for any town in the state in the future. That, and she heard recently that NEMRIC is in the process of developing, which is the software that we use for municipal services, that they're in the process of developing a new module for listers and for the grand list. So that might be changing as well. Then the second thing that she had concern about was regarding when it comes time for each town to do a reassessment. So obviously for Guilford it will be for 10 years. I don't know what the time frame is for Vernon. And the concern there is that reassessment takes a huge amount of time, as everyone knows, and effort, and would mean that the other town that's not having the reassessment done would have neglect in their office. And so that was part of the concern there.
Okay, but those are all things that we would consider after we take
Correct.
Richard's suggestion to heart,
Yep.
and then decide whether, I mean, we have to see whether it's feasible or not.
Absolutely.
And if it in fact would, if we decide we want to go ahead and do that, and if it in fact would be cost effective. Did you have a second question, Michael?
Well, it's just about specifics of how the various jobs operate.
You can always email me about it.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, and I just wanted to say that I would be very interested to talk with the cemetery commissioners of Vernon about what the lay of the land of their cemeteries are, and, you know, just to help research that, since...
I was actually under the impression that she thought that their cemetery commission was very keen on meeting with you guys as well.
Oh, well,
Did the town start using
That's
insured
really
contractors
exciting.
for mowing last year at the cemeteries?
pardon me?
Did the town start using insured contractors
Well,
last
we
season?
had,
Or-
we have one contractor who has liability insurance, but nobody has workers' comp who's working in the cemeteries now. And it's a very specialized thing. You and I can talk about cemetery issues if you're interested. You are interesting, I just misspoke.
Thanks, appreciate that.
So I think we should just have a motion to pursue this if the select board chooses.
I mean, you could also do informal agreement, like you've done,
Consensus? Sure.
consensus as you've done in the past.
So how does the select board feel about this issue? Is everybody in favor of pursuing this a little more?
I'm in favor.
You are in favor?
Wasn't there supposed to be a combined select board meeting?
No,
Well,
that
first,
was-
each separate select board
Yeah.
needs to
Just agree
indicate
that we're
whether,
interested in
Yeah.
participating.
and then if that's the case, then
We may get to a combined select board meeting when we start looking at the details and the weeds and determining if it makes sense, but.
so then now Michelle and I need to do background, if both select boards agree the same, then Michelle and I need to do background work, and then we'll eventually potentially get to that point.
I'm in favor of it. I think it's, you know, it's a step in the right direction, both economically and in terms of neighborliness.
I'm in favor in terms of the economic piece especially. My only concern is your time. And as long as you're not being stressed for the other responsibilities that you have in the office, I'm all for, you know, pursuing this. But because most of these things, we're not going to be able to move on for a while.
It'll take a long time.
And, you know, as long as you're planning that out in segregated line, I'm for pursuing it, yes.
Yeah, I am in support, yes, of collaborating with
Okay.
Vernon.
And I'm in support, I think, for all the reasons that everybody said, and also, there's just a trend across the state, as Peter mentioned, for municipalities to try to cooperate, to try to reduce the burden on taxpayers. So if we can do anything towards
Agreed.
that, so you have now the sense of the board. I would like to move that we move local emergency management plan in front of water education grant participation in respect of Jared Bristol's time. Are you okay? Because
I don't have to be at work till 7 tomorrow morning. So
oh my God. But I think it might take us just a couple minutes to get through that, so, and then you wouldn't have to.
Sure.
So would,
So you need a second.
so is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
So, thank you, Richard. So I wanted to say that my goal was, we have a new emergency plan template. Local emergency management plan, and there's a short form and a long form, and I've been working on it, and I had hoped to get the whole thing finished tonight, but I did not. Sadly. And it has to be approved by May 1st, so we have another meeting. I'll get it done in the next couple of weeks. It's just, I have to find a pet shelter. So if anybody wants to...
A pet shelter.
We have no pet shelters in Guilford, and there's no pet shelter. I can't find if Brattleboro has a pet shelter, and I don't know what to do with the animals.
Is there
So I'm trying to
a
figure that-
description of what a pet shelter has to be?
You have to be able to take your animals someplace in case of an emergency where they will get tended to, but you can't bring them into a people shelter because so many people are allergic to animals. And so we need some other solution, and I just have been told that I need... I can't hear you, Richard?
Wyndham County.
That's where I am on this. I'm checking with Wyndham, I'm gonna check with the Humane Society, I'm checking again with Alyssa Sabeto at Wyndham Regional Commission, but I didn't get that part done yet. I checked with Marianne Lawrence, but I haven't heard back from her. So, it's kind of a problem, because in,
This needs to include
To
what size animals? Cows?
yeah, I don't know
horses, or
what, so, anyway, so,
Pigs?
and so I got onto the state emergency animal protection plan, and it's limited to not me. I can't get there, so I have to do some more work on it. We had a problem. Never mind, I'm not going to go there. So I'm going to do that, but in the meantime, Jared raised the issue of another thing that's in the emergency management plan is that where is our primary emergency operations center, and where's our secondary, and where's our tertiary. This is the secondary emergency operations center. The first one is the Guilford Fire Department. That's where our satellite phones are, that's where our computers are, that's where our whiteboards are, that's where our forms are, that's where our printer is, our fax, our phones, did I say radios? Everything that we have, badges, everything, megaphones. Nothing is up here except access to the internet.
And all our files.
And all our files, which are on the internet.
No, they're on our server, which is only local.
No, all the
Oh, the LEM stuff is in the
all
Google
the
Drive.
appendices, all the templates, all the forms are on Google Drive. So Jared said, why doesn't the town office have a generator? And I said, it wasn't in the budget this year. We don't have the emergency funds for it. And even if we did have a generator here, we would have to get to the fire department and get everything up here. So in order to really be a functioning emergency operations center. So Jared said he wanted to talk about it with the select board. So you are on camera.
You want to come join us?
Come join us, Jared.
I'd love to. Close to the speaker.
That's right.
Jared loves being a
You're on
TV.
TV.
I guess, I don't know where the rest of I guess a conversation that should happen before this to warrant the generator is we probably should talk about having duplicates of things, because I wasn't aware of that. If this is a backup EOC, we probably should have a fair amount of that stuff in both spots just for that reason. So we probably should attack that first. And then in the meantime, be looking for grants, which Peter's lovely at, and getting, or something along the lines, or planning to get a generator, because like in our last tabletop we had the big statewide drill, that was the scenario, was we couldn't get to the fire station, and we were talking about where do we meet. We talked about the Grange, that doesn't have a generator.
Right.
We didn't have anything out here, so if we're gonna meet here and run out of here for a lot of different reasons, that's why I brought it up again, to wonder where the status of that was. Especially with our renovations here, I think it would have been a slick time, and it doesn't really matter, you can add them at any time, any point.
Yeah.
Exactly,
We
but,
just didn't have it in the budget.
yep.
So Jared,
Go ahead.
I just had a question about whether Would one of those Tesla power battery walls be adequate? Or do you think a generator is the only thing that would fill
My
the bill?
understanding is that they're only like an 8 to 10 hour
Yeah.
cover
So-
time.
Okay,
So no, especially
Okay.
for a lengthy incident
Yeah.
days, you'd want a generator.
okay.
Do you think the town office is far enough away from the fire station as a secondary? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Okay.
Things, different scenarios that were brought up was like
Yeah.
the center road washed out before weather at Hollow Road. We get thrown all sorts of different scenarios and things, and tanker trucks tipped over or something happens and you have to react to it. Well, we do that very well in this town and we do great, but I think this was one of the things where we needed to is that in the center of town here, there's not a spot for, the school doesn't have a generator. This place doesn't. We're talking about, you know, sheltering people at the town garage in a bay because they have a generator. I mean,
No.
No,
yeah,
that's
they're out of the
that's a
elements.
third shelter.
That's a third shelter,
Yeah.
but still.
No, I think you make a
I think it's something we should be thinking about, and we should be having your go boxes like you have at the station and the thing. We should be setting those up for here. I mean, it's just a matter of making copies to have our forms ready. I mean, our radio system, I mean, you have some sort of radios here that you can talk to us and the town guys, correct?
It's the,
Yep,
yeah.
which aren't gonna work with
Yeah.
without any power. So, my next goal, and I'd love to have it, and I know it's gonna be a harder one, is to do something like this at the school, because the
Yeah.
school I know is 3 different additions and the electrical system is spread out. But if we ever had to, I mean, John and I just spent a 2-day class at Brat Fire on an active shooter, emergency scenes and stuff like that. And that really opens up a lot of issues and it opens up a lot of different scenarios. And you sit back and go, wow, if we had to do this in our town, oh boy. There's a lot of things we gotta think
Yeah.
about. Which brought this subject up again. So if we need to put those kids there for whatever reason, or people from the town there, and if we had heat and water, we can figure the rest out. So to get them out of the elements, I mean, it's a huge building, we should
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
advantage of it.
For sure.
So,
You think we can if we don't own it anymore?
don't know, that's the other thing.
I mean, God,
Well, we know we're gonna own this place,
yeah,
so let's start there is my thought.
yeah.
Yep.
I wonder how other towns are facing this. Do you know whether other towns just have generators in their schools and town offices?
Vernon is looking into it. I know I just went
I
to a
see.
meeting there with North Star and their EOC in the area departments because of all their decommissioning and stuff.
Right.
And VY or Entergy gave them a building and put in a generator, but it's not theirs. So Vernon is in, I think, in the same situation. They're trying to figure out if they're gonna build an addition on the fire station or somehow figure that out in the fire station, or if they're gonna do something in the town office. So they're in the same boat trying to figure things out. I don't know if their town office has a generator and if they'll put one in.
I don't
If-
believe it does.
So, I mean, we experienced a night when we couldn't have a select board meeting here because there was no light. And so, I mean,
Right.
the generator would make a lot of sense, but, Richard, are you trying to say something?
No,
Okay, thank you. So when I did aviation security in my, we used to talk about targeted risk and how likely is it, you know, that we would aim our resources at the most likely risks and then sort of as the risk target got less and less likely, fewer resources would be directed to those less likely risks. So if we are talking about the risk of the Guilford Volunteer Fire Department not being accessible, how high of a risk do you think that is? That we should start investing resources in duplicating the whole EOC?
Well, look at Irene. We didn't think that was gonna happen. And I think if this place had a generator, we would have used it a lot more than we would have at the fire station. And at the fire station, what a lot of things that aren't thought of is, yeah, we'll be gone and you'll have all kinds of room. But when we're gone, we fill our spot back in, mutual aid. So we're gonna have the same amount of people in there, in the station, standing by. Weather at Hollow Road, we had a house blow up with propane.
Oh, right.
We had all our mutual aid departments, which is 3 engines, fills our station back up, but you're gonna have the manpower there with it. We also have an urban search and rescue team. We had the state police setting up
Yeah.
EOC in there because they wanted to investigate. That's just one isolated little incident.
Yeah.
So if we have a town-wide thing, we're gonna be busy.
Okay.
And are you guys gonna operate better up here in your own environment with your stuff, with your, I mean, the EOC doesn't have to be all on one room. It's probably better if it isn't in some spots, in some cases, because
Okay.
you're gonna be able to,
So maybe we should have
yep.
more, because I think about incident command as primarily you, and then the support of the EOC, you
Yep.
know, the emergency volunteers. And so not being able to be in close contact makes it a little more difficult to really know and be supportive.
Yep.
So I think we would need to also figure that out. But I hear you.
May I speak to one
Yeah.
second? One point that, because Jared and I spoke about this last week, one point that he made to me is in the event of an emergency, for example, like Irene, that if we had something like this set up here at the town office, because I would be directly involved with whatever work is going on, that I would be able to access all of my resources instead of having to try and find a way to access it from somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I think
it makes sense from the standpoint you're giving the townspeople another option besides, you know, these
Yeah.
others, if we have electricity here.
Yep.
How big a generator do you think we need to run this place to the
It's-
standard? Well, our
this
service isn't big here.
No, it's only 200 amp, but this is like a typical house. I mean,
Right.
if
It's
that.
not.
Right, so that's what.
It's only 100 amp, so
They verified that when we did the renovation.
15 kW.
if
Yeah.
that, I mean,
Right.
that would be,
Might be
I think your
12.
next step is to have an electrician come in and tell you, what do you need?
I think that's what we ought to pursue, is look into what it would cost. We did talk about a generator.
sorry, Richard?
I was agreeing with what Gordon said. I think
Yeah.
the center of the town affairs should definitely be able to be online in case
Yeah.
of emergency. But I think that it's really essential that we have a generator.
And we did have discussions about, and they were vague, but, and the feeling was, since we had the EOC down there, it wasn't necessary at
Yep.
that time. That was the general feeling.
Yep.
So you're raising, I think, a
And-
very good point.
If we have an incident, that's probably where we're gonna run out of, but
Backup.
we like to think worst case scenario, and that's what we're throwing in all of our drills, is worst case scenario. Okay, you guys are all focusing that that's gonna happen. You know what? We're gonna take that away. Now what do you do? And we wanna be able to do that, so.
Thank you.
And so at this point, should we also reach out to the school board, I guess, I mean, how would we engage with the school, or is that not our job?
I was gonna chat with John. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I think
we have
that's a good
a,
idea.
We have a meeting coming
we have a
up.
meeting Friday, so,
Are you
I don't-
encouraging the school to also look into getting one?
I'd like to, but I don't know what their details are and how pricey it's gonna be.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when it's piecemealed over there, I have no idea. That's gonna be, I think, a bigger project than,
So
Because-
I
because
think
that-
we will get,
I'm
I
sorry.
think, sorry, I'm gonna.
100 amp service with all the
I'm
radios
sorry,
and stuff
excuse
that
me?
way.
Your name is?
Paul Beebe.
Paul Beebe,
Oh.
and, go
The
ahead.
100 amp service is gonna be enough for the radios and stuff if something happens to the fire department.
that's where the electrician comes in. I'm not gonna say yes or no, and no. You're probably gonna upgrade the service when you do the generator, but that's,
But even so, a 15
Right.
amp KW, or a 15 KW would
Right.
probably
Yep.
be sufficient, but we'll look into that.
Yeah, so there is more stuff going on the emergency stuff in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
We have a meeting with the school and the superintendent sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Mhm.
And Jared and I will keep talking, and I'm gonna do some more work on the emergency plan, so.
Do you
Madam Chair,
Sir,
Ian Keel, BCTV cameraman. I'm actually a Brattleboro resident. I was just curious, you mentioned you had a first EOC and then a second and a third?
we have, this is our backup emergency operations center, and No, we don't have, I don't remember if we have a third one or not. I don't
Okay.
think so.
I was just curious.
Except we have a third shelter.
Okay, I was just curious if you mentioned your town garage had a generator?
They do have a
They do.
generator, yeah.
And I was just gonna say, in the absence of a generator, does it make sense? Can that serve as a second backup? Or-
No, it's
Okay.
kind of not functioning as an office, you know.
And in the event of emergency,
Space.
the road crew would be in that space.
The road crew would be unbelievably busy and usually, probably in an emergency.
That's why I brought it up. I heard
Yeah.
you say generator.
Yeah,
Do you want any action to be taken additionally besides you meeting with Jared?
yeah, I think we need to figure out
Contact an electrician.
the contact an electrician, which you're gonna do over that phone jack anyway, right?
That's
It's a not electrician, okay, phone, and see what we need to do for the generator, and we'll start there, you know.
okay, so I will contact
Thank
the
you.
electrician and our current generator servicer, since they also install.
All right. Thank you, Jared.
No problem, thank you.
Appreciate you bringing that before.
Yeah.
No problem. If you have questions or whatever, I don't know how we want to proceed with the other about getting doubles up here.
Oh.
We'll talk,
it's just- it's
your
a-
meeting down at the fire station, your EOC, when you do that, we can talk.
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks for
Thank you for
coming.
letting me
Have
butt.
a good night.
Thanks, Jared. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Water Education Grant Participation. Peter?
So I received an email from the Green Mountain Water Environment Association.
Right.
They have been partnering with the VLCT to create a series of informational brochures about what not to flush, pour, or spill into either municipal wastewater systems or into private septic systems. So with that, the brochures are creating will list household contaminants that could harm either of those types of systems, and also include proper disposal methods for those. So what they're looking for is to enlist every single Vermont municipality to help print and distribute this information, both physically or and online. So they are almost finished creating their PDFs and are looking for towns to do this. So they understand that this will cost money to print these brochures because they're color brochures. They said that 2 of them will be able to be printed in black and white. If the town really needs some assistance, they have a grant opportunity, but they said it's really only applicable for the smallest towns in the state that have no municipal budget.
They want it done this year?
Yes, they want it done this year.
Can we start online?
It's up to you guys what level you want to participate. So
what kind of cost do you think we're looking at?
well, it depends on how many copies, whether or not you want to print it black and white, and how many copies you want to make.
Well, they wanted it to go in every tax bill, right?
They did want it to go in every tax bill.
Which is, what, 900 pieces, 1,000 pieces?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're printing it in color, it'll be about 25 cents per copy. You know, if we print it in black and white, it's about a nickel a copy.
How much of an issue is this for us?
They
They
I
just
don't
want
know.
people to be aware of
I
this,
don't
right?
know how much it's an issue. They claim it's an issue across the state. I cannot speak to the level of severity in Guilford.
Why don't we see what the document looks like as a starting point,
Okay?
in my opinion.
And I think your idea of putting it online is a good one. We can start there, and, you know, if we need to, if it looks like this.
I mean, you could also put 10 copies that we print out from the town printer on, you know, the counter up front, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's, you know,
And we can
that
also, if there's gonna be a special meeting, distribute it at the special meeting.
could do that too.
I mean, we have our communication methods, and, I mean, I think online, in the library, here, maybe at the front desk of the school, you know, and then we could
School
think about
backpacks.
who we're missing, you know, who are people who, go ahead.
It can also be in our town newspaper.
The Gazette,
The PDF can be reproduced
yeah,
there.
Covered bridge.
everywhere. Okay, so
Okay,
to be worked on slowly.
okay. So we'll wait until we see
See
a
what it
return
is.
from them, because they have not actually completed the design of the documents yet.
And we can offer our support, you know, relative to our size, rather than to say, we'll print a whole, you know, 900 glossy leaflets to pass out to everybody.
Okay. So you have some actions? All right. Next item, social media policy.
Everyone has a copy with them.
Everybody has a
Yes.
copy, except the notes are not here.
I have the
Did you
notes
accept all of
on,
those changes?
We accepted 2 of them. They're not on any of the,
No. Sorry.
didn't we get it online?
We did, I just spent a lot of time trying to, I need to
no,
pull
my
it.
notes didn't print.
Right.
I have it and I've read it.
I'm gonna pull it up to, hold on a minute.
Yep, there. See, here's several on this page, the second page.
There's some on here. It's just spread out.
So there's some comments, but Peter, in the prohibitions, which are the big things to be discussed, they're not there. So, let me go back to. Oh, they've all been accepted. So, all right, well, let's start at the top, because they've all changed. Well, I think that,
We have to go through this piece by piece,
Richard, I'm sorry,
all
say,
vetted.
Richard, what?
Yeah, do we have to go through this piece by piece, or if we've all vetted, and we just express our thoughts about it, whether we should accept it as a policy?
No, and I didn't think that we needed to go through everything, but this one. Okay. Oh, cool.
So there's a way you can review it.
Yeah. Okay, so,
I mean, it seems to me that so much of this is template material that I don't see where an argument should take place. That's my thought.
okay, so we weren't, so I think the policy in general is the same as we adopted last year that was never posted, or was posted and has disappeared, I don't know.
Yes.
However, the things that that have changed that are significant are the prohibitions for what can or cannot appear.
And what page is that?
And that is page 4 and page 5. So the original policy had said you cannot have comments not topically related to the particular thread, topic, or article being commented upon. And the suggestion of the new model policy from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns was comments not topically related, which is what appears in your your hard copy right now.
And that's on page 5?
Page 4, bullet 1.
Okay.
Okay, we gotta
Right.
maybe put these into numbers because that'll be easier than bullets. The second bullet was comments in support of or opposition to political campaigns or ballot measures of any kind. And we have since learned that that prohibition is not aligned with the First Amendment, which provides for free speech. So that one had been eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
Profane, obscene, or sexual language is the same. Content that promotes or fosters or perpetuates discrimination is the same. We've added in religious statements, including comments that endorse or oppose any type of religious opinions or activities. Solicitations of commerce has been changed to posts and comments that promote or advertise commercial services, entities, or products, except as stipulated in town marketing plans and determined by the town to be essential to economic development. And that is another recommendation of VLCT. The next 3 bullets are the same. Instead of defamatory or personal attacks, it now reads posts and comments that include vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks or accusations. Instead of conduct that violates any federal, state, or local law, illegal activity or encouragement of illegal activity, and the rest of it is pretty much the same. The other notes, there's no changes in the email section. The other notes primarily on page 6, second bullet from the bottom. The following forms of communication or activities are prohibited. Any solicitation for commercial purposes, religious or political causes, any outside job or other non-job related solicitation. And we solicit stuff all the time by email. We request for proposals. I mean, I just can't imagine what the purpose of this particular prohibition is. And I would suggest that we delete it.
Up to you guys, would you
I
want to remain it to be removed?
When using town email addresses, blah, blah, the following forms of communication or activities are prohibited. I mean, we solicit stuff by email all the time.
We solicit, but these are non-related solicitations.
Yeah.
So like
Commercial purposes or other non-job related solicitation. Non-job related, I mean, we look, Peter's point is we even ask, we look for, we recruit online. So
we have to sort of split that into 2, I think.
But those are job related, that's what I'm saying.
What's the job?
I don't know. Whatever
Well,
the
our
post is,
job
or-
as select board members to engage with the public, to get people, let's say, to volunteer to do things.
Does everybody feel that this makes sense to leave in?
I mean, I read it as if I were to, in my job, if I were to use my town-related email for personal business, is how I read it.
Yeah, if that's the way you interpret it, then this is correct to say the way
But
it
that's
says.
not what it says. And I mean, I think.
But I think that's the meaning, I mean, that's where I was going, I think that's what it's trying to say.
Madam Chair,
Sir,
would you be willing to read the entire statement?
Oh, no.
I'm not gonna read the whole thing.
No.
But the following form of communication or activities are prohibited when using town email addresses. And one of those activities is solicitation for commercial purposes, religious or political causes, any outside organization. So do we make
Or other job-related
other
solicitation.
non-job related solicitation. So for example, we have an architect, we reach out to somebody by email to, on
But
behalf
that's
of that
job
architect.
related.
That's job
This
related.
is saying, this is saying
Okay.
non-job related.
I think what it's saying there, the non-job related piece is saying that if it's not part of your.
I'm happy if you guys
organization's-
want to leave it in. I'm just like, I don't,
Well, I'm okay with it as long as that's the interpretation.
Madam Chair,
And that's the way that I interpret it. I think it's to limit commerce, advertising. Religious or otherwise.
Do you think it's referring to a potential conflict
I
of
think if we
interest?
don't know, we can't implement it. And so we either need to find out what is
Do you want me to
intended by
contact
VLCT, or we need to delete it, because if we
I wouldn't
can't
delete it.
implement it without knowing specifically what it means, then we're not doing our job.
That's a good
Ian
point.
Keel,
BCTV cameraman, again, I'm a Brattleboro resident. I was actually speaking with some of the public during your executive session. I had a chance to record the Secretary of State when he did his open meeting report. And the way I would interpret that is what it's saying is if you had a town employee who used their town email to say things like vote for candidate X, or join this church, or suffer eternal damnation. That is the sort of prohibition. That's, I think we had examples of the federal government, of government officials using their official emails to campaign for candidates. So I'm just sharing you my interpretation of why that clause is there.
Makes much more sense, thank you, Ian.
That's the way
So I have an action point to contact VLCT. to
Confirm
confirm
that understanding
before we get-
as expressed, okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Yes, so are we on content management
I
yet?
don't really have any other,
I have a question for you.
yes.
So I'm concerned, I'm interested in the social moderator, the town social moderator, being the moderator.
Right.
Because if you do not have one, then, well, it's been represented by the town administrator. And we all know the reason that we do not have a social media moderator, that it is the town administrator's job to fulfill that role, that we must have one.
We must have one, and we have to figure out how to make it work. The fact, if we, adopting this policy does not necessarily mean that we know how to make everything work yet. It's just that that's where we have to go. And we have to look at Peter's job description.
Right.
Yes, it was a concern that I had that of the job description of the social media moderator, especially to sort of police, or edit social media, what people post seems, well, I just feel heavy-hearted about how to do that efficiently, or what our town wants to and needs to be involved in, considering what people do post in social media. I guess this is an ideal policy, and I just think it's asking for somebody in the town to take on, how many hours a week is it going to take somebody to keep it real in the way that we want it to be. And I don't think that it's, I guess, a concern about town and social media rather sort of than policy. It seems almost sort of not exactly impossible, but deeply cumbersome.
I think that's a good way of putting it. I know that so far I post on Front Porch Forum agendas, videos, issues that are coming before the town, and everything has been, with one exception, civil, true. But I think if we start using a Facebook page or a more interactive websites or other interactive social media, more interactive social media options, we may find ourselves in a situation where we need to do what the law requires, and we have to, the same way that we have a procedure for meetings, we have to have a procedure, because these are, what we are talking about is limited public forums, just like this select board meeting. People have a right to talk, but they need to be on topic, and they need to be, there's a whole lot of requirements for how a select board meeting is run and how the meeting in the public is run. And the social media platform would be another meeting in the public that we, so for example, select board cannot debate among themselves on social media a matter that's coming before the town, because then we would be having an unwarned meeting. So we all have to be very increasingly mindful of what's public and how we interact, and these are pretty good guidelines for for that kind of more transparent, more visible, two-way interaction, that, yeah, it's going to be cumbersome.
So is there more we need to
Adopt the
dis?
policy.
I'm sorry, Richard, would you say that again?
Can we vote to adopt or not adopt this policy and then work on how to execute it?
Only if you make that motion.
I so move that the select board adopt the social media and email policy as written and corrected in the latest version.
Is there a second?
I didn't hear what the end of what he said was. Could you
As the
repeat?
written, as it's been corrected.
Okay.
Meaning the VLCT's
Yeah.
input on that
Mhm.
question.
I mean, that we adopt the policy, I'm just trying to clarify, that we're adopting the policy with the understanding that we don't know exactly how to implement it yet?
The implementing is going to be, we're going to learn how to do it over the course of time as we
Okay.
start implementing, as we start
Pieces.
participating more in social
Okay.
media.
Okay, I would second that.
That's my motion.
Thank you. And Veranda seconds. Is there any discussion?
Can I, yes, I'd like to say that I read this and I think that it's a very good document, it's a necessary document, and I find it beginning to argue about.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So we actually probably need to sign this another time because we don't have,
Yep, I needed to
Yeah, so-
print a formal copy.
Okay.
great, thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody who worked on those editings.
Can I make another motion
Yeah.
that we discuss constable and duty roles at a different meeting?
Hey, that sounds great. I'll second that.
I will. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, everybody, this is just getting so long. Living Communities Challenge update. So Lynn, will you hold that book up? Are you still here, Lynn?
Yes, I'm
Would you hold
here.
that green book up? Okay, so that is the Algiers Village Vision Plan that was the result of a year and something's work by four, that's okay, 4 Guilford nonprofits and supported by, let's see, Building Green, I think, and Wyndham Regional Commission and a bunch of different entities, people on the Living Communities Challenge, Living Futures Institute. The Friends of, I'm just here to say as a representative of Friends of Algiers Village, not as a select board member, that Friends of Algiers Village decided not to pursue living community registration and certification of any projects. We decided as a board that, and I'm on the board, that these were aspirational guidelines, but not something that we wanted to get involved with in any national or international effect, that we thought Guilford is a pretty good community and that most of what's in this vision plan is work that the community is already doing on its own. So that's it. So there's no more action being pursued by any of the nonprofits on that. So.
I think that was a wise decision.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good conversation in the Friends of Algiers Village board, and then we reported to GPI, Guilford Preservation Inc., CC4G, and the Guilford Community Church with the other 3 nonprofits that were working on this, and everybody agreed that this was the best thing to do. So there's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So was this recently decided by Friends of Algiers and the nonprofits? How long, when was that decision made, I guess?
So the Friends of Algiers Village Board met beginning of February, and discussed it and decided not to. And then I reported to the Planning Commission as well as, and tonight to this, we were supposed to, it was on the agenda that we canceled our meeting because we had no power here. So I reported it to the select board tonight.
Okay, so, and then I wanted to clarify, when you mentioned Friends of Algiers and the other nonprofits, are you a member of Friends of Algiers, or are?
I am a member of the board, yeah.
Okay. And I think one of my, well, I won't say last question, but all the things in here that, so now you're not doing the Living Community Challenge, but you're probably going to pursue what you have in this design, is that correct?
No, I guess so I think the example that I gave at the Planning Commission was Friends of Algiers Village is working on a site plan for the exterior, the parking lot and the exterior of the Broadbrook Community House, which is the, Broadbrook House, which is the Guilford store and the offices upstairs. So that entails drainage, storm drainage, taking care of the wetlands, the trails that are around there, and then there's a small field to the left of the parking lot as you're looking at it. And the idea is we would do that with some sort of permeable pavement, and we would make sure that the stormwater, the drainage and the stormwater flow is compliant with all the sort of ecological requirements that are in this book. But that's it basically. There's no more.
Because I listened to your March, so you said this was decided in February. I listened to your March 11th select board meeting. And I'm pretty sure it was the 11th. You did mention some of the things that you hope to see in Algiers. And one is the, you called it a meat packaging, I call it a slaughterhouse. Where is that vision? Because it was stated.
So I think what I might have said, Lynn, is that in January of 2017, a resident proposed that there be a meat packing plant in Guilford, someplace. And that person was thinking maybe of investing but not putting together a plan to do it or anything like that. That conversation went nowhere as of January or February of 2017.
Why was this mentioned just in March? I mean, I'm sure I could find it.
I don't remember mentioning it, but different people have had different ideas and nothing happened.
I think if I remember correctly, Lynn, it was brought up in the context of ideas for economic development that people had that didn't go anywhere.
Or that was the only idea that had been, that had surfaced.
Was that with the goals?
In discussion. No, but I think it was when we were talking, I don't remember exactly the contents, but I thought your point was that was the only economic viable, thing that had percolated that never went anywhere.
Never went anywhere, no.
That's my recollection.
So nobody is planning,
that I know of,
packing or a slaughterhouse. And
the senior housing and the housing that you want to, or some of the nonprofits want, is that still in place?
I can't answer for the nonprofits. I can answer for Friends of Algiers Village and say no, but that is not the issue before the select board tonight. So I think you would have to ask the individual nonprofits what their plans are. Friends of Algiers Village has no plan for senior housing development.
Right, GPI. Does.
Yeah, I'm not on.
Okay, so Living Communities is completely done deal for good?
The four nonprofits will not be applying for registration or certification of the living, to be part of the Living Communities Challenge, to be a member of the Futures Institute or anything like that. We're happy with what came through this whole process. Are there any other questions that relate to the Living Communities Challenge report? I mean, it's not a select board matter, so I'm feeling awkward about doing this.
Paul Beebe.
Yeah.
Do you know of any businesses that are planning on as a select board member? Did they tell you that they were planning on building these communities?
There is an Act 250 thing that we have tonight that relates to the Paul's Road in Brattleboro. Something to do with 5 housing units? I don't remember.
We didn't put that on the agenda for tonight.
Oh,
Was that
What is
just
that?
communication?
well, there was a communication, yeah. So there's some act, yeah, it came.
But to the select board? Has that been shared?
5 or 55? Isn't there a unit that's going to be 55 units?
I don't know, I'm looking at,
I guess I missed that, I never saw that.
I
so
didn't see
Guilford, Green Mountain Power is trying to construct some electric lines off Weatherhead Hollow Road or something like that, that's not it.
That's not the 250 yet.
Did
No,
the
this is-
250 go out to the select board, Peter?
I don't recall seeing the 250.
Okay.
I didn't see
I
it
didn't see
among
it
our
either,
things.
so.
Madam Chair, can I ask you where Paul's Road is located?
Got it. Okay,
It's on the Brattleboro and.
it's in Brattleboro.
Guilford.
It's where Omega is.
Yeah.
There used to be a junkyard.
I can, I can
Well,
actually speak to this if you want me to.
I think we'd like to hear from, we'd love, maybe you can add after, let's see what.
Yeah.
There's an application, initial Act 250 application filing March 11th. The proposed project, the development of Lot 28 of the Delta Business Campus is part of Phase 1 of the Master Planned Use Permit 2W1066. The project includes the construction of 5 single-unit rental dwellings in the currently undeveloped 1.13 acre Lot 28.
Is it in Brattleboro or?
It's Brattleboro.
Guilford?
It's not, it's, we just get notified because we're abutters and it's, you know.
So, Madam Chair,
So, Ian Keel.
I'm
PCT.
now speaking as a member of the
The
Brattleboro
Brattleboro-
Development Review Board. The Development Review Board approved those 5 rental properties. It was apparently pitched as potential housing for employees of the
Omega
Commonwealth
Commonwealth.
Dairy.
Oh,
So it has, that development of 5 houses at that location has been approved by the Brattleboro Development Review Board, and now it looks like they're seeking state Act 250 approval, which is why you were notified,
Yeah.
right? Because Act
Oh,
250
correct.
has to notify,
Notify,
Yeah.
property,
Yeah.
the butters.
But we don't know about anything else going on there. Lynn?
I have another clarification I like. I think this goes to the same time that I did hear about the packaging. Walking trails, you guys, or someone, I don't know who, walking trails, and there was excitement at the table, actually, walking trails to the Blueberry House. Who, when, who, like, what is that? What does that look like?
I don't know anything about
I
it.
mean, Richard, is that his name? Richard might remember. 'cause he
Walking
was-
trails to the Blueberry House?
There's
Richard, do you know anything
I
about?
heard there are some, but I've never done it. And I think one of the Wyndham Regional Commission people did it one day. There is a trail through the woods by Broadbrook or something like that, but I don't know what it is.
But unless that was a meeting I missed, I don't remember.
No,
I think the recreation, I mean, this has nothing, it is a trail thing, but it doesn't have to do with the Blueberry House. I know the Rec Commission had been investigating the idea of having overland trails or collaborating with people who know about previously existing trails going toward Fort Dummer. I have heard nothing about, through Guilford. But
Did you ask Richard? I mean, he was excited about trails
Richard,
to the Blueberry House.
do you know anything about walking trails around Algiers Village?
No, except that.
going to the Blueberry House?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I seem to recall when the Recreation Commission was giving an update on their work and mentioning that part of their goal was to investigate more walking trails in Guilford, and I do remember that they mentioned something about the Blueberry House. But this was just a kind of dream goal that they were talking about. That this would be some of the thinking that they were doing.
And they may be the same as the vast trails, I don't know. We don't,
Well, I think.
it's not a select board matter again, Lynn.
No, that's fine, and I'll actually gather my facts
Okay.
and present them another
You
time?
might get in touch with the rec commission and, you know, if you're
Well, it was
either,
mentioned at select board level. It's okay, I'll get my paperwork. There's a piece of paper I forgot to bring this evening, which actually covers some of these things.
well, I'm sure that the rec commission would
It's
like
like the
your
whole
input.
vision of opening Brattleboro to Guilford. It's been talked about, it's repeatedly, it's out there. I'm just asking for the who's and, you know, what is that vision? But
Opening Brattleboro to
No,
Guilford.
okay, so I know what Lynn is talking about. So
Oh,
when we
okay.
talked about a path to the potential Better Connections grant that is separate from the Living Communities Challenge,
well, that's why
it's
I'm
separate from
asking
the
for
Recreation
clarification.
Commission. When we talked about the Better Connections grant, and there's a roadmap that was shared with the Planning Commission, one of the possible options was to take advantage of the walking trails that exist already in Algiers Village that go to the country store and around that and down to Broadbrook and stuff like that, and to connect them to the industrial park. And that would maybe increase traffic to, foot traffic to the store. That is a possible thing that might be explored if we were to go ahead with applying for the Better Connections grant. We would not do that unless we have a community discussion about that. And that point is also in that roadmap, about needing to have community discussions to see whether or not there's a project. Is there a project? What would it look like if there is maybe a project? Is it something that the community wants or not? And so we have to convene some community discussions around that topic. So those were all laid out there as ideas, possibilities, things that we might discuss. And the next step would be to have community meetings.
What was it called again? The connection?
So there is something that's called the Better Connections Grant. The application for that is due January 31st of 2020. We, as a select board,
And it doesn't open until October 1st.
it does in October. So we, as a select board, created a plan for to figure out whether or not we want to apply for that grant.
And that grant is only a feasibility study.
Yeah, it's not a,
There's
it's
no
not a
action to be
project
taken.
implementation, it's just like,
One thing I hope that the select board would keep in mind as a resident I grew up here, I think of people, we all know, there are some really big issues in Brattleboro that is nice to keep in Brattleboro, and I personally, I think of people who live by themselves. I feel uncomfortable with the thought of kind of opening up these paths that might go by, you know, we're in the country, we're isolated from neighbors and stuff, and I really hope that when that is presented, that that's considered is who would be walking.
so Lynn,
Just
this
saying
is not that public meeting. We will
Well, I'm
convene
just sharing
public
Just
meetings.
sharing.
No, please remember to keep it.
Because it took me a while to get to the
Yeah.
point of what I was talking about, and now that we're all on board and Mr. Little, everyone understands what I'm trying to present, that's something I hope that is thought about and
Yeah.
considered.
Please remember it, because that's going to be one of the important things that comes out, you know, things like that are going to be important to however we manage this process.
That's a
Yes.
good point.
So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Local Government Day and Home Rule Update. That's you, Peter, right?
It is me. So, a whopping 6 weeks ago, practically, on Valentine's Day, I went to the VLCT Local Government Day. It's a day that they have been doing in recent years where they partner with the Vermont State House to have some activity, a couple of speakers and activities related to some topics that VLCT is advocating for with legislators, and then get members of member towns of VLCT to send representatives to go to the State House. So the main focus of this year was around the topic of home rule. The secondary focus was on proposed budget cuts that have the potential to impact towns. So just very briefly, the beginning of the day was just kind of an introduction by VLCT and what was going to happen. Then we spent several hours over at the State House. I had been asked by one of the VLCT representatives to join a group that went to the Senate Committee on Finance, where they were discussing a variety of things relating to town highway financing. Some were cuts, and another was a new gas tax. And 18 people from 18 different towns all gave presentations to the Senate Finance Committee. Most of them made it very clear they were of varying degrees of political belief, and unanimously, every single one of them were opposed to the governor's proposed tax cuts because it would basically incrementally wipe out funding for a variety of projects that all towns, Guilford included, rely on to get highway work done. The other thing was that there was universal support for this very minute half-a-cent increase in gas tax, which is the revenue from that is supposed to go to help the towns across Vermont to do additional highway projects. The only downside to that is they're only estimating that's going to be a couple $100,000 in revenue per year, and if you divide that by whatever 255 towns or whatever it is we have in Vermont, that doesn't leave much funding per town. Then we participated in the General Assembly meeting, which was this, because this was at the beginning, and Veranda was there, and she read her poem, which was great indeed. And then we had a keynote speaker from West Virginia. It was one of the legislators from West Virginia who helped push their pilot program for home rule. And so he kind of gave his personal story and involvement with that. And I won't get into all that, but it was kind of a feel-good story about his journey into politics and then into the involvement with that and what happened. And then in the afternoon, we spent, some people met with their legislators to talk about this home rule proposal that VLCT is pushing. And then others, the rest of us went to additional committee meetings. So, but overall, in the State House, people from the various communities from Guilford that were there, as well as the legislators, all of the conversation was all about this proposed home rule. That's what the entire day was about. Even if you wanted to talk about something else, that's what the day was about. Interesting. So.
Charlie Vanis.
Hi, Charlie.
What's the general consensus on the home rule?
Are you
in the
me or the
state or
select
the
board?
town? The select board.
Well, you and the state.
So the select board looked at it a month ago?
Yeah.
Because VLCT asked us
For support.
to support it and to see if we wanted to be one of the pilot towns. And we said we supported the concept, but we did not want to apply to be one of the pilot towns because we don't feel like we need it. We felt it would be more beneficial to other communities and larger communities.
One of the resources.
And that we didn't want to take those resources and so we just supported the concept. That's it.
Right,
I don't know.
But not the idea for this town.
No, not for Guilford. And that's in the minutes from 1 or 2 meetings ago.
But that was to be part of a pilot.
That's
Yeah,
just only
yeah.
the pilot project.
It was a pilot program that they're just starting to roll out.
They're going to do 10 communities in the state, and we don't want to be one of them.
And so one of the things that came out of this day is the whole time it's been that 10 communities would be part of the pilot project. The pilot project was looking to be a 10-year project, and now they've shortened it to the proposed project is a 5-year project. That if it is successful, then it would enable other communities to take advantage of those that way of governing sooner. And if it's a abysmal failure, then you could just move on. To answer your part, the other part of the question, Charlie, from my experience at the town government day, everyone I heard supported it.
Supported to have their own rule.
That's correct. which would, the idea is to give communities more control over regulation and how they do things, and than having the state do it.
Next,
Broadband.
broadband.
Yeah, so I'll try and keep
Is this,
this.
do we want to do this tonight, or do we want to postpone this to another?
It's
meeting?
up to you, because
There's
I
nothing.
would like to postpone it to another meeting. This is a very long meeting.
You're so correct, Richard, and I'm feeling sorry for everybody sitting here. And there's
So-
nothing that we would need to do in the next 2 weeks that makes it important for us to hear about this tonight.
No.
Was there anybody who came with a burning desire to talk about
Broadband? Okay, so
So,
we will table, I move that we table the broadband meeting update to the next meeting.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Richard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you want to do finances?
Oh, sure. I'll make a motion that we pay the following warrants. Payroll week ending 3/17/19 for $6,388.36. Payroll week ending 3/24/19 for $6,366.82. Expense warrant number 1918 for $27,054.69. And expense warrant number FW18 for $40.50 for a grand total of $39,850.37, of which on expense warrant 1918, primarily that was made up of sand, salt, insurance, and repairs to our town equipment. Meaning
The big
our
four.
highway
The big four, yeah.
which has been
Is there a
bothersome.
second?
I'll second.
I second.
You got beat to it, Richard. Veranda did it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Richard, hang on 1 second. I would like to say thank you all for coming tonight. Usually we don't do this for 2.5 hours. So please come back.
It's nice
This was a
to
really
have
super
people.
long meeting, but it's really nice to have people here and listening and
Appreciate that.
asking questions. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And I hope that we were able to address the things that you came caring about.
I also wanted to,
Motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Hang on 1 second more, Richard.
I just wanted to thank Lynn and anyone else out there who watch our select board meetings
Oh, yeah.
on BCTV or on YouTube. It's really great to see people getting involved in the town government and what's happening. And it really is good to see that the resource that we have through BCTV is utilized, so thank you.
And especially our cameraman, Ian.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Ian.
Our loquacious cameraman.
What does that mean?
Richard?
Loquacious.
I'd like to motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Get Gordon seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So the meeting is adjourned at 8:55.
Okay, but we have to sign the warrants.
You do have to sign the warrant.